Thank you for choosing Axxess On Demand. Axxess believes in continuing education, and we create content to empower you to learn and grow anytime, anywhere. Let's get started.
Hello, thank you for joining us for this webinar, which is going to help you hire your best team. My name is Laura Barnett, and I'm on the marketing team at Axxess. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Axxess. We're a leading technology company serving organizations that provide healthcare in the home. We offer a complete suite of easy-to-use, innovative software solutions, empowering home health, home care, and hospice providers to grow their business while making lives better. If you have a question for our presenters during today's webinar, please submit that through the chat box. We'll check in on occasion and see if you have questions and get a chance to answer those. If we don't get to answer your question during today's webinar, we will follow up with you after the webinar to ensure that you get your answer. Today, you're going to hear from my colleagues and friends, Anita Paxton and Billy Turner. Anita has spent more than 20 years partnering with small to Fortune 500 companies in various industries to build teams. She has consulted in times of rapid organizational growth in a very competitive labor market, building and assessing organizations and hiring strategies to deliver talent to meet their organizational goals. Billy is the Senior People Director at Axxess. He oversees all aspects of human resources with the goal of placing the right people in the right place to execute Axxess's strategy. Billy's leadership has helped foster a workplace that has been recognized as a best place to work on multiple occasions. Anita and Billy, I know you have a ton to cover, so take it away.
Absolutely, Laura. And hiring your best team starts here. Today, you'll learn about how to cultivate a culture-first mentality in hiring, how to best assess if your candidates are the right fit, and how our new virtual work environment factors into hiring.
So, Simon Sinek is an author of multiple best-selling books, including Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, Together is Better, and many more. In his book, Simon says, when most organizations think, act, or communicate, they do so from outside in, from what to why, and for good reason. They go from the clearest things to the fuzziest thing. We say what we do and sometimes how we do it, but we rarely say why we do what we do. So let's look more closely at these concepts. What? Every single company and organization on the planet knows what they do. This is true no matter how big or small, no matter what industry. Everyone is easily able to describe the products or services a company sells or the job functions they have within their system. For how some companies and people know how they do what they do, whether they call them differentiating value propositions, proprietary processes, or even unique selling proposition. Hows are often given to explain how something is different or better. But why? Very few people or companies can clearly articulate why they do what they do. Why means, what's your purpose, your cause or belief? Why does your company even exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, and why should anyone care? When communicating from outside in, however, the why offered is the reason to buy, and the what serve as a tangible proof of that belief. So in his book, Simon Sinek introduces the golden circle, which is an attempt to explain why people and organizations are particularly able to inspire others and differentiate themselves successfully. So today we're talking about hiring your best. So when recruiting, if we start with why, we can help potential employees self-select, that's important, self-select as whether they believe in our cause. If they do, they'll buy into the why and what we do. And when an organization consistently focuses on their why, the employees will stand with them through thick and thin because they believe in that why. And when other companies attempt to recruit them solely on the promise of a better salary or a title, these employees will think twice about exploring those other opportunities. So let's talk about what our objectives that Anita mentioned before.
So our first objective is how to cultivate a culture-first mentality in hiring. You know, as we proceed to consider the following question for you, and it's really one that was posed by Harvard Business Review, just to define some attributes of game-changing organizations. What if your organization applied some of your most important attributes to the processes you use for obtaining, hiring, and retaining talent as well. I made it put an emphasis on retaining because um, it's about building teams, it's about growing teams. To build that team, it's not about just hiring, but it's also retaining the talent that you have. So, Billy, let's start with culture.
Okay. Thanks, Anita. Because your culture begins with your purpose. Because an organization's purpose should be a bold affirmation of its reason for being in business in the first place. From historical to ethical to emotional, even practical perspectives. The purpose is the organization's compass. It's telling it why it's here. Just like Simon Sinek says, start with why and where it's going. Although most business leaders can articulate the organization's purpose, most employees feel disconnected from it. Gallup research shows that across all industries, only 41% of employees strongly agree that they know what the company stands for and what makes it different from its competitors. Also, less than half of the US employees, that's 4 out of 10, strongly agree that the mission or purpose of their company makes them feel their job's important. Organizations that successfully embed a strong purpose into their culture can go beyond communicating their purpose internally. They find ways to live it. So Anita, how do we differentiate our culture?
Billy, I'm just listening, and really what you just said resonated. And culture has to begin with the purpose. Culture is going to be something that's going to attract talent. But first, companies have to really figure out, how do they differentiate their organizations? So organizations spend a lot of time and energy, self-diagnosing their culture and coming up with ways to change it. But, culture is emergent. It's unique to each organization. Each organization has its own history and goals for the future, and its culture should be true to both. So, when defining the culture, I would suggest that you just take the first step and probably the easiest on the cultural journey. It's the why and the how of the organization's culture that matters most. If you don't define and communicate your culture, your employees will create one for you.
And Anita, that makes a great point. We have to be intentional when it comes to our culture. You have to be intentional that you communicate that culture constantly. If you're communicating it constantly, your staff will understand what it is and they'll be able to execute it on it every day. So if you live it every day in every decision you make, that will make an impact in your organization.
Great point, Billy. Otherwise, organizations will have a hidden culture. What you don't communicate, people will create themselves. So most employees will assume and create a culture from, their previous organizations or, previous work experiences if it's not communicated. So at Axxess, we're intentional about communicating our culture at every stage of the talent process. It begins before we have our first conversation with the candidate, actually. It starts with talent marketing. So if you're not familiar with talent marketing is how we create brand awareness, consideration, and interest during the hiring process. I want to share with you a few reasons why it's important to market a great company culture. Again, you want to create that brand awareness. It's going to really help attract top talent. More importantly, it's going to engage and motivate your existing workforce, your staff. You want to ensure that your culture is communicated even when you're posting for positions. When you're looking for that great talent and you're actually posting those jobs out on, whether it's on job boards, on your careers page, you want to make sure that in those postings, your culture rings through. And incorporating the company culture during the interviewing process, very important. And I know we'll take a deep dive into that later, but just to put that out there. Also, ask the culture first interview questions that relate to your company's values. Again, you want to model your company culture throughout the talent process. It's easy to say things, but if you don't model them, Billy, they're just words.
Mm-hmm.
You want to communicate your company culture during your onboarding process and even as you engage with new hires. So, with that, culture determines your brand. So there are different types of brands, and they're achieved through different types of cultures. The brand and culture of a company reflect each other in an interconnected way. While a brand can be defined as the outward manifestation of a company's DNA, the culture is where your brand is born. That's birth right there. So successful organizations, they make a compelling brand promise to people that are seeking opportunities with them. It's a commitment to quality, it's to their people, and a standard of service. That's the differentiator, Billy. That differentiates them from the competition. Without a compelling brand promise that motivates people, your culture just seems undefined, it's uninspiring, and it's making unlikely that it will significantly affect growth of your teams or your business performance. So when we really look at culture, it's unique. A unique culture goes beyond internal aspirations and achieve their desired brand identity. If your company's culture is aligned and integrated with that identity, your employees are more likely to make decisions that take actions and take actions that deliver on your brand promise. That brings me to the Axxess Way. So the Axxess Way delivers on our brand promise. It's a living, breathing document that is our guide and our compass for how we treat each other, how we conduct business, and how we give back to the community. More importantly, it's a commitment to our people, those that are here with us and those that are looking to join us. And it's to our vendors and partners, as well as a commitment to our community. It's communicated in our talent marketing, it's shared on our website. I mean, it's who we are and what we stand for. And it is evident in our daily interactions. It's how we treat one another as colleagues. We treat each other with respect. It's how we make our decision as an organization.
And Anita, one of the things I'll tell you, I've been at Axxess for going on 9 years now, and what I'll tell you is that's how we've been able to keep that culture that we had when we were a smaller organization as we've grown, because everybody is committed to that. It's who we are. It's shared on your first day and shared throughout the employee experience. And whenever we work together and collaborate, the Axxess Way flows through all of that collaboration. And it actually makes the workplace a more fun place to be, don't you think?
I think it really does. And, Billy, that makes me reflect on when I joined Axxess. For years, when Axxess first started, I remember the brand awareness. So we talked about that earlier. I remember just hearing about there was a new organization in town and that it was growing. And of course, I was always seeking to help collaborate and help consult with companies on that growth. But you know what happened? I started to continue to watch Axxess. I watched and I watched. I read the Axxess Way and I saw the interactions that were happening on social media. It got me excited about the organization. And that excitement lasted for quite some time because I can truly say that, before I joined the organization, it took me a couple of years, Billy. I didn't do it immediately, but I was one of those people on the sidelines watching. But as I share this story with you, I want to tell you about the Axxess Way in true form and fashion. I remember pulling up in the parking lot because I wanted to go visit Axxess to see if I could help collaborate and grow their business. And that gentleman saw me wandering, kind of looking around, lost probably, trying to find the building, trying to find where the organization was. And he asked me if he could assist. As we began to walk, he said he knows where Axxess is, and he starts to have conversation. We're talking about business and hiring and people. And that conversation continued until we got to the door of the building. Once we went inside, he politely, which I didn't know he worked there, he politely asked someone to assist me. During that time, I'm thinking, okay, well, gosh, he could have told me he worked there, but that was okay. Because what happened next is as I began to engage about the growth potential of Axxess, talking about what were things, the roles that were needed, the type of people that they were looking for, I was also given a tour. That tour through the building actually took me along the office where that gentleman sat, and I was introduced to the CEO. That was the Axxess way for me in true form and fashion. It was John Elajide that I met on the parking lot. It was him that held great conversation with me as we walked to the door. And it was him that guided someone to assist me. Never saying who he was, very humble. And that's who we are as people. That right there, that interaction was something that gave purpose, that helped me understand more about the Axxess way.
And Anita, that's exactly right. So that brings me to this last piece of this slide where it says culture brings purpose and brand to life. And just your interaction that you just had is a great example of that, because culture is an organization's GPS, and it gives its employees the routes and roadmaps for how they are going to live the organization's purpose and deliver on their brand promise to their clients. But unlike a typical GPS, culture is not always obvious. Like you mentioned before about hidden cultures, it's communicated regularly by what leaders say, and even more importantly, by what leaders do and the decisions they make. The most successful organizations don't see building a culture as a standalone initiative or a program. Instead, develop a culture is an aspirational approach to bringing an organization's purpose to life and creating a brand that's uniquely meets your clients' needs.
So, when Axxess was formed as an organization, we were intentional about defining our shared beliefs and values that will then influence our behaviors as an organization and our people. Our culture is what makes us unique. It's our true North Star. It is our vision and mission, and it's communicated often to help us maintain focus and aim. Now, let's talk about culture and the impact on your brand and how it helps you hire the best talent. Culture attracts world-class talent. So people want to work for an organization that lives out its mission every day. Growing and maintaining a consistent culture across all teams or areas of your business, whether it's your field staff, your front office, your back office, is essential for attracting the best talent. A culture that places people first has a positive impact on attraction, and it also increases employee retention. Remember, it's not only attracting world-class talent, but it's about retaining world-class talent. Right now, if you didn't notice, there's a fight for talent, and the great company culture places your organization in a position to compete. The culture shared with others must be the culture that is delivered throughout actions within your organization. Your organization's reputation is a primary reason why highly talented individuals want to work for you. A strong purpose and mission are important factors for determining whether or not someone is attracted to your brand.
Yep.
So let's look at organizational alignment. Organizations, they gain momentum when their employees are aligned. So as you hire that talent, you want to make sure that that alignment occurs day one of onboarding. So moving in the same direction toward the same goal. Alignment creates your roadmap for growth, being purposeful and intentional in assessing your talent needs. And it also helps align organizations and provide agility. It helps them move in lockstep. They're open to quick shifts with workforce trends. And as you can see, we've had a very quick shift here lately with our workforce trends and with regulatory changes that can impact that talent. We have a culture of collaboration and teamwork to create organizational alignment and agility in the hiring process at Axxess.
Well, Anita, once you find that great talent, it's important what you do with those people when they join your organization. You have to make sure that they're engaged with what your mission is, what your values are, and your culture. Because the organization's culture really is more, I almost think about it like as a pervasive force, right? That influences the way that people work together. The way they work together and collaborate is directly impactful to what happens when your clients receive their services and products. So it also impacts how decisions are made and which behaviors are rewarded and maybe who gets promoted. So we want to make sure that we offer growth opportunities to our staff when they come on board. And this engagement is a key piece of our focus on a culture, because culture sets the tone and can be a major influence on whether an employee is attracted to come there. And Anita just mentioned the competitive labor market, or if they stay there, because retention is a very important piece of this as well. So in short, engaged employees are the fuel for your organization. It gives your organization purpose and brand, and it sets the direction. But once they're engaged, how will they perform? Culture has to be such that if it impacts performance. Research indicates there's a direct link between employees understanding their organization's purpose, culture, and how they measure business health. Among U.S. companies, 4 out of 10, I mentioned this stat earlier, 4 out of 10 feel strongly the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. By moving that ratio to 8 out of 10 employees, organizations could realize a 41% reduction in absenteeism, a 50% drop in maybe safety incidents, or even 33% improvement in quality. Culture is that important to what happens with your employees in the way they feel, the way they work, and the way they collaborate with their teammates. Culture is the unique way our organization lives out its purpose and its brand promise, and that for that reason, it functions as a differentiator to other organizations in your space. Employees and teams who most align with the culture consistently perform higher than those who least perform.
You know, Billy, I even saw a study on LinkedIn that said increased engagement is going to lower cost, and it actually shortens the hiring process. Those are just a few benefits of engagement. It's benefits, you know, the shift to internal mobility that's happening, but the biggest benefit is overall retention, improved retention at that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about our next objective of how we best assess if a candidate is the right fit for our organization. We just talked a lot about culture. Now let's talk about how that fits into our talent initiatives.
All right, now that we've talked about culture, this is just about our talent acquisition strategy, right? And its impact on the organization. So we're going to focus on how to shape your hiring strategy around the culture of your organization. First, let's start by defining 2 different hiring strategies. I'm not sure if most people are aware of this, but there's talent acquisition and there's recruitment. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but talent acquisition is a plan based on the needs of the business, and recruitment is the needs today. It can be a little bit more reactionary. Talent acquisition is going to focus on long-term approach for finding the best candidate for growth of your business. So positions that require a specific skill set to meet the objectives and goals of the business, recruitment is going to be short-term. It's the approach to filling that seat now. So it's going to be more tactical in nature. So how are we going to build your hiring strategies around culture? Building your hiring strategy around culture places emphasis on hiring for aptitude and attitude first. I want you to think about that. Hiring for attitude and aptitude. According to the Society of Human Resource Management, also known as SHRM, communicating a winning culture is the key to success. To communicate a winning culture, market your culture to attract the talent you want. Leverage your message across social media platforms and your career sites. Incorporate that in your strategy. Hiring for culture creates an alignment with the organization and the candidate. This also has a positive impact, again, as we've mentioned earlier, on retention. Our workforce has shifted and candidates are more apt to change companies that are not meeting their needs, that's not providing flexibility or a sense of trust. So we really want to make sure that when we are putting our message out there, we're communicating all of this to those candidates. Candidates now can choose where they want to go, what organization they want to be with. I do remember at a time when people were at organizations for long periods of time, they had lots and lots of tenure that could have spanned 5+ years. It's a little bit different now. People want to be in a place with good culture. So how do you determine the competencies, the culture competencies when you're hiring? When this is applied to an organization, it requires determining the characteristics or the behaviors to create success. Talent acquired in the healthcare profession places their awareness, attitude, and knowledge into practice by repeating culturally competent behaviors, right? That's what you're doing over and over. This practice delivers the best medical care to patients while demonstrating cultural awareness. So apply that to talent acquisition and to your strategy. So there's some attributes that we're going to talk about to guide you in developing culture competencies. First, self-knowledge and awareness about your own company's culture. Again, Billy and I just shared with you some things you need to assess and how it's defined and what you really need to know when determining that. Awareness of your own cultural worldview. You know, we are a global organization. When you look at all of the places here in the United States, the cultures that's represented here, the diversity is so rich. So we want to make sure that there is a worldview that you own. And then experience and knowledge of different cultural practices. You know, when I think of healthcare, healthcare isn't related to just one culture, just one type of person. Everyone is, you know, eligible or can become sick and need health care. So we want to make sure that we do embrace that in our cultural practices. And then your attitude, just overall, to cultural differences. So assess your candidates for culture fit. Hiring for culture fit is about bringing your employees into the organization that beliefs, behaviors, and the values, they align with those of your organization. It's important to include diversity while hiring for culture fit because different perspectives and different experiences will help your company improve and scale.
Anita, I wanted to remind everybody, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the chat feature on GoToMeeting, and we'll kind of cover some questions here in a little bit. But I just want to remind everybody about the chat.
Are there any questions for us right now, Bill?
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura.
Sure.
You know, we'll move and look at competency-based interviewing. So during our hiring process, we encourage you to ask competency-based interview questions to identify candidates who share the same values as your company and they'll fit into the workplace. You know, there's some people talk about culture fit. You can also think of it as culture add. You want people that add to your culture, that enhances that culture, that makes it better versus the opposite. So competency-based recruitment refers to an approach that is used to attract this new talent. The approach aims to ensure that the companies hire the right workforce that has the right skill sets and values. Have you gone through the process of aligning your organization's culture with your interviewing questions? If not, I encourage you to think about that, and we'll share with you how to do that here in a few minutes. Competency-based recruitment has the ability to directly impact the bottom line of your organization. So hiring the right candidate goes beyond just assessing their technical skills and their knowledge. Competencies plays a critical role in determining how successful a candidate will be within your organization. So a competency-based approach to recruitment begins with matching the roles, the job roles, not only the job levels, to competencies. This will also help you reveal current skill gaps that you have within your organizations. So that's what you really want to focus in on. So let's talk about, you know, a few things again about competency-based interviewing. According to Deloitte 2021 Human Capital Trends, workforce potential is not about what applicants were recruited to do or what they are certified to do, or even what your organizations or your leaders want them to do next. It's about providing them with more freedom to choose how they can best help tackle your critical business problems as organizations and ecosystems evolve. Billy, one of the things I think about is when you have problems or when you have their challenges within the business, critical business challenges, and you really want to solve those. We talk about solving them at a higher level in which they're created, right?
Okay.
But we also want the input of our people.
Absolutely.
A lot of times, would you say that people can really add to that?
Of course. I mean, that's part of the collaboration that you want to see within your organization, where people share their ideas and make sure that they work together and have that kind of great working relationship and build that bond between each other. And that, again, is going to impact your retention.
Absolutely. A well-defined approach is documented. So when you're interviewing, you want to make sure that it's well documented because it can make a positive impact to the qualities of hires for your organization. It's critical to train your hiring managers or whoever that is that's making those decisions to follow a structured process to ensure consistency and equitable treatment of all candidates. So when we look at a systematic approach to interviewing, structured interviews with a set of questions and follow-up questions in the same order, they're most effective that way. It helps to alleviate bias hiring, right? Multiple interviewers, so you want to have various perspectives. A panel interview can assess scores for each candidate and average their responses to reduce individual biases. A rating system with 5 levels ranging from, low to high or a pass or fail format, that can be helpful as well. And how do you easily assess interpersonal skills? That might be tricky for some, but finding the right candidate extends beyond identifying the right skill set for their open position. It's a good fit for your business. And it's also someone who can, build rapport and with their coworkers and their supervisors and any of the clients that they may interact with. These interpersonal skills can be identified during the interview process. And based on the candidate's answer, you can find out who may be best suited for the position. We'll share more about identifying interpersonal skills here shortly. Let's look at some techniques that can put candidates at ease. Really, when you're interviewing, for most, if they don't do it often, they come in very nervous. We want to be able to assess and really have that person put their best foot forward and really find out who they are by putting them at ease. And so while competency-based interviews are structured, you can conduct them in a way that really lets them be more at ease and really give you authentic answers. And it can make the interview seem more like a conversation. One of the things that we do here at Axxess, when we're interviewing, we really don't approach that and tell a candidate that it is truly, quote unquote, air quotes, interview. It is actually a discussion. We want to learn more about them. We want to learn more about them, their experience, and just the skills and how they think and what's important to them. And then we want to share more about who we are.
Right. I think that to get back to culture a little bit, that's an opportunity for us to share our culture, or you to share your culture with your candidates. Because again, this is going to be a win-win for both the candidate as well as the organization when you find that great person to join. So this is an opportunity for you to structure the interview in such a way that you can build it around a conversation where you can learn more about them, they can learn more about the position in your culture, and you can have that conversation and see those interpersonal skills, because that's the way they're going to operate with each other every day. That's how they're going to interact with their coworkers, your clients. So that's a key piece of making sure that you see that during the interview so you know it's going to happen when they join.
Absolutely. So I think of culture as your net. When you're out there fishing in a big sea and you cast your net, your vision, your mission, your values, your purpose, those are all the things that weave that net together. And if you don't carry that out through every interaction, you'll create holes and they'll drop through. So here again, even through the interview process, the tone of the interview should be one that's helpful and provides friendliness so that it can just minimize some of the barriers to clear communication. And so in order to establish this critically important element of rapport with the interviewee, a genuine attempt should be made to put them at ease. You know, one of the things that we do here again is we're always there to greet the person. We want to make sure that they feel welcome. It's like opening your door at home. If you just, open the door and walk away and not say hello, how does a person feel when they walk in? They're not going to feel as welcome, and that's going to make them a little bit more tense. So whether it's virtual or it's in person, it's making them feel at home.
That initial impression, Anita, is really important because we've actually had candidates who've become Axxessians. We call ourselves Axxessians. Those candidates who become Axxessians have shared with us that initial stage where they came off the elevator into our lobby and how they were treated just with Axxessians who were walking through the lobby. They may have offered them something to drink. They may have just greeted them, asked them how they're doing, and just had a general conversation with them to put them at ease at the start of their interview was a key for them making the decision to join us, because they saw how we operate every day and they felt that. And that's how that Axxess way we mentioned before permeates the organization. Everybody lives it every day, and people who come into our suite, whether they're a candidate, a visitor, vendor, whomever, they feel that. So that's why culture is very important when you have this as a part of your hiring process.
Absolutely, Billy. And again, when we begin the process of interviewing or the discussion, we want people to really feel, you want them to be at ease. We want them to make an adjustment to that environment, to our environment. We want to be able to have maybe just a little conversation prior to the panelists joining. So the situation.
I was going to say, because the candidate's anxious already.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the most nervous things that you can do, is go into a strange place and have someone talk to you about your strengths, your weaknesses, and try to find that job, because you're seeking new employment, you're seeking a new opportunity. So putting that person at ease is a key piece of making them feel welcome and comfortable in your organization. Sorry for interjecting.
No, that's fine. And so the situation, whether for the interviewee, we're adding people to our workforce. There are candidates out there that they've never entered the workforce before. So just imagine how they feel entering into the interview process. They've been prepped in school, the new grads, they've been prepped in school and have been taught a lot of things, but it's different really when it really happens. But we also, as you just stated, Billy, have people as they're changing, as they're switching, as they're moving to other opportunities, it really affects how they feel. So just making them feel at ease, it will also impact how they view the organization, making them feel welcome. Regardless whether you select them or not, you want them to all walk away with a great candidate experience. I can tell you, we talked about branding earlier. Branding can work both ways. They can brand you in a good way, or bad experiences can deliver something different in branding. So unless you put the candidate at ease in the interview, the interviewee may be unable to reduce his level of anxiety. And really, if you've ever sat across the table and interviewed someone, or if you did that virtually, and that candidate had high anxiety, it really impacted on the information that they delivered to you. Nothing worse to go back and see that person land somewhere else that made them feel better. They put their best foot forward and were able to really articulate what they can bring to the organization and what they're looking for. They had a better interview. And that whole setting can really make the difference on whether you actually get a great candidate or not. Hate to lose talent. We're not in a market where we can afford to lose talent.
Mm-hmm. And what I would say, Anita, I want to take this down to more of a personal level, because you want to have empathy for that person who is coming in and interviewing with you, or interviewing with you virtually. Put yourself in their shoes and understand how they're feeling. And if you see them nervous, focus on, I know you have a systematic approach to your interview and your question set, but take a minute to take that piece, to reach out to them and make that a conversation and ease their anxiety, and do it from an empathetic standpoint. And I think that'll make them understand, again, that you want to be a coworker.
And you know what? our team here at Axxess, one of the things that we are guided to do is to really make them feel at ease. We do that through our interactions that we have with them prior to the interview, but we also make sure that we are discussing that or sharing that with the hiring manager or the panel that's going to be interviewing that candidate. We want them to help put that candidate at ease, to bring their best self forward.
Okay. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about the benefits of hiring, competency-based interviewing. Because while we want to make them feel at ease, like we just talked about, and have empathy with them, we want to make sure that we have a consistent interview process. So we need to make sure that we have a detailed understanding of the candidate's abilities and how competent they'll be in the role, because we still need to fill the job with a quality candidate. So we still need to get that information. So you need a methodology and structure that'll help you find those things out. It gives you consistency in the interview process when you use that methodical approach, and you create that consistency. And by standardizing it, you can make direct comparisons between candidates. You have to do things in a fair and structured way, because what that'll do is it'll eliminate bias and make the individuals remain impartial and keep the interview on track. If your interviews are unstructured, you stand more chance of an unconscious bias of maybe not treating people in an equitable way. Using a structured interview process ensures that every candidate is assessed fairly and objectively, and guarantees that you will be moving the best candidates forward in your organization. We also need to make sure it provides clarity in the candidate feedback, because we have an interview feedback that helps the organization's review of the candidate across the different competencies. We're going to talk about some competencies here in a minute, because all the different competencies to make sure they are fit for your company culture. Providing feedback to unsuccessful candidates shows that you value the person and appreciate their time in participating in your recruitment process. Oh, I said recruitment process. I'm sorry, your talent acquisition process. So from your organization's perspective, a candidate may be suitable for other opportunities in your organization and can be an important source for future pipelines. I know Anita I've been in interviews with her before, and she's talked about that and asked people about who may be in your network that may be a fit. So we want to make sure that you provide something that's going to give you an indication. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to? Okay.
No, I was just gonna jump in on that, Billy. When you said that, that brings us, that's referrals.
Yes.
Referrals are a great source to help you build your team.
And it's not just referrals from existing employees. Anita, have you gotten referrals from candidates who have been interviewing with you?
Absolutely. Candidate referrals. Most people think of, or organizations think of, referrals only coming through current employees. As we have interactions and we talk to candidates, we want to know, do you know of anyone else that may be great for our organization? And it's surprisingly enough, when they have a good experience, they want to share.
Mm-hmm.
They share with us, but they also share with their network.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that brand piece we talked about before, because you want the interview to be so pleasant that even if they're not selected, they're going to recommend you to other people in their network. They may come and become a customer of yours. You don't know who that's going to impact. They could have a conversation with someone at a dinner party that weekend after an interview where they mention what a great interview they had with your company. And that can be something great for your organization. But if they're hired, it predicts future performance, because past behaviors is the best predictor of future performance. And by asking questions that require candidates to think about an example or provide some specific details or steps about how a past situation could be a good indicator of an individual, how they may perform in the next role.
Billy, let's take a moment and pause here. Laura, are there any questions?
In fact, there are. I'm glad you asked. So we have two, both from Van Castaneda. Great questions. The first one, do you guys have any recommendations in hiring tools like personality testing or behavioral testing that can help with finding the right candidates?
Actually, there's a couple things you can do. Either you can invest in some of those tools or you can create your own. There is a way that you can really create one, and we'll share that with you here shortly. So you're actually setting us up for the rest of our conversation. So we'll actually share that with you, how you can create one that's going to be more personalized for your organization.
That's a great question.
And Van's other question, do you guys have any tips for virtual interviews? This is kind of hard to do in this new COVID era. You had talked about, greeting folks as they come off the elevator and that warm welcome that we were able to give them in the office. That's really not part of the protocol anymore. So how are we able to do that when you're interacting with folks via a computer screen?
Hold on tight, Van. It's coming. We're going to share that with you. I promise. I think you know what we're saying next. So we're going to share that with you too. So just hold on tight. We're going to let
And
you.
actually, there's one more that just came in from Susan Weimer. How long should an interview last? Her fellow coworkers think 15 minutes is good. She likes to take about 30 minutes. She feels that you need to take time to see what the people are about. What are your thoughts?
Personally, I would say 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You can be very efficient. You can learn about that candidate in that period of time. And it's not just learning about them. You want to give them the opportunity to ask questions and learn about you. And you don't want them to walk away being one-sided where you got all the information from them and you didn't give them anything. So you want to make sure that you receive, but also give information.
And I think 30 minutes is completely
Absolutely.
appropriate, because if you remember back to our previous slides, we want to talk about having a conversation. And if you have a conversation where you get to know someone, that's going to be a little rushed if you have that within 15 minutes. So I think 30 minutes is a good time frame to have that. And if you have a structured process that we mentioned in the previous slide, that 30 minutes, you're going to get a lot of information and leave the candidate with a positive experience about how your organization goes about the interview process.
Are there any more, Laura?
Nope, those were it.
Perfect. Well, we're going to get to Van here shortly. We're going to answer. So hold on, Van.
So one more thing on this slide, we've got lower employee turnover. And as an HR person, I will tell you that's a very important piece, because if you hire the right people and you keep them engaged and focused on your culture, they're going to be performing better. Like I mentioned on the earlier note here, new hires need to align with the organization's culture. And by using this competency-based interviewing, you can reduce those bad hires. It costs a lot to go through the talent acquisition process, and then you bring them on board and train them. And then it just doesn't work out because we didn't focus on the interview and have that structured interview to make sure that they're going to be a fit for our organization, because it lays the groundwork for better hiring and assists the new employees for future development and growth, because they're making a career change. A career change is a very disruptive thing in someone's life, and you want to make sure that's going to be a great fit for them and you as an organization. And by identifying those core competencies, it provides a basis for more effective, structured interviews. All right, so let's look at some of these competencies, the interview competencies that we were talking about before. Okay, so this is a list. I just put together a list of some common competencies that you may use to make sure someone's a culture fit in your organization. And for instance, I'm just going to pick one of these. Okay, let's say problem solving. So if you think problem solving is a key competency for someone coming onto your organization, what you could do is ask a question, something like, what is your process for solving a problem? Kind of walk me through that. And maybe you can listen for certain things when it comes to that.
Yeah, Billy, I would suggest listen for, things like, was this a good example? Was the thought process specific and thorough?
Mm-hmm.
Did they give consideration of impact to others? And you want to also listen for, did they speak or seek input and advice from others? Did they research the situation at all? Problem solvers typically do a lot of research. And providing a process for executing and resolution.
Mhm.
Those are some things you want to listen for when asking that
Yeah.
question.
And one thing that you may find when they're doing that problem solving, when you ask that question, they'll talk about how they work with other people.
Absolutely.
And you notice on this slide that team player is another competence that you have. So you can ask them something like, tell me about the best team that you've ever worked with and why, and what was your role on that team and what did you achieve? That's something, that's kind of an example of a question you could ask.
You know, and when you're asking that question, I would say listen for we and not I focused responses. You want that to come through as a team. It's never about I, but it's about we. And then along with that, you want them to be more collaborative. You want them to listen for collaboration and inclusive partnership examples that they give you. Working with together for, a common goal and embracing others for ideas. You don't want it to be one-sided. You want it to be team. You wanted it to be more about the group. That's important.
Mhm. And for a growing organization, you want to bring on someone who's looking to grow within your organization. And a key piece of that may be how they continue to learn. Do they have a learning mindset? Are they curious about learning new things and maybe how they approach that? So you could ask them, when's the last time you did anything for self-improvement? What was it and what motivated you to even kind of pursue that?
And you want to listen to, was it a recent activity? What was the motivation for doing the task at hand? Were they self-driven to learn, or was the learning requested by someone else? And then desire, dedication to continue learning.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to create, the standardized interview experience, it's critical to create a resource that will assist your hiring manager and all those others that will conduct interviews to guide their conversation. So Van, these are one of the things we were talking about here when we're saying customize it, personalize it.
Yeah. And one of the things we've done, you want to incorporate those core values into your hiring process to make it easier for those interviews to assess a cultural fit for your organization. So here's an example on the screen of a culture assessment that we call it an assessment. We've kind of had a play on words here at Axxess. So we designed this tool that we use for every interview to make sure they're a culture fit because it focuses on characteristics of what it takes to be a culture fit for our organization, the Axxess way that Anita mentioned earlier. Each candidate is evaluated in the same set of criteria as they meet with leaders throughout our organization because we want to hire difference makers, people who will perform and we can trust to get the job done. They'll own their area of responsibility and seek new opportunities for growing their careers. And of course, we want champions of our culture to join us. So next, all right, Van, we're coming for you here. How our new virtual work environment factors into hiring?
So during the pandemic, some organizations had to incorporate new ways of hiring in a virtual environment. There are tools that were incorporated that will cover to support and the remote hiring process. So whether you've conducted virtual recruitment in the past or if it's new to you altogether, managing remote hiring, you can overcome these challenges and learning curves when you're hiring talent virtually. But start by developing a clear process for setting that remote hiring strategy, and then ask the right questions. So the next slide we're going to see here is just some of those tools that can be used. If you don't already have one, and of course we're not endorsing any of these companies that are here, any of these tools altogether, but an applicant tracking system. So an applicant tracking system is going to be a tool that can help that talent or recruitment team manage and use. It's a database for harnessing those job applicants that come through and those applicants that are interested in your organization. And then you have screening tools. So screening tools that we have listed here, like such as Spark Hire, increases your recruiter's efficiency by eliminating that phone screen. You can actually do that and free yourself up to do other things. And it also elevates the candidate's skills relevant to the job. It allows you to put in questions. Most of these already do, whether they're video or whether they're text questions. But it can be your first line of defense when evaluating candidates, and it provides an additional touch point for engagement. And then we have video interviewing. So there are different tools. Zoom is one, Microsoft Teams is another one that will allow you to share a link with a candidate. It'll allow that candidate, you allow when they come into the room, and you make sure that your panel is ready, whether it's one hiring manager or whether there's a group of hiring managers, but you actually can have that conversation, from screen to screen versus face to face within a lobby or in a room. And then for sourcing, sourcing great talent, you're going to look at LinkedIn. There's Indeed, ZipRecruiter, all of those ways in which you can post your positions to really source the best talent. And then again, when we talk about talent brand marketing, I always go back to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. So newsflash, if you're not using TikTok, you can gain talent from TikTok. So tap into those social media avenues where your talent may reside.
Mm-hmm. And that's great, Anita. And once you hire those folks, we need to make sure that we have virtual human resources tools that will allow you to engage with them and properly maintain their employee records, right? So I'm not sure if we got any HR folks on the line, but I'll kind of explain each one of these systems. So HR management systems will allow you to engage with employees, but keep their information confidential. And as they go through their journey with you, you'll be able to input their promotions, all of those different types of things in these HR management systems. And these are just a few, and I'll repeat what Anita said. We're not endorsing any of these. These are just a few of them. ADP, Workday, Bamboo HR. These are different companies that provide this type of service. And then once you get them on board, you want to continue their learning. Earlier, we talked about that competency of learning. Learning management systems will help with that, and it'll help you track their growth as they learn new things in your organization. So Bridge, Litmus, and Moodle are three companies that offer this type of service. Communication is key in this virtual environment. You want to make sure that you maintain those touch points, maintain that engagement. And the way that you do that is through communication, such as Microsoft Teams, Outlook, and Gmail. That's for their communication with their teammates on how they're doing their job. But as far as collaboration during meetings, you can do something like we're doing right now, GoToMeeting, or Microsoft Teams or Zoom for that. And also it's important to have virtual document management systems like SharePoint, Google Docs, and OneNote to ensure that all of the things that they do from not only an employee perspective, a training perspective, but it's also documenting the processes and workflows within their departments. It's key to make sure that you have that document management system set up as well. And these are just a few of those.
And Billy, you hit on one that's the learning management system. And when we're talking about hiring and building your team, we want to make sure that you're building the talent that you have within. And I've loved the fact that we have Axxess certification. It's been one tool that we can utilize and that we have utilized here. And I can say that I personally have to help me get that industry knowledge and continue to build upon that industry knowledge. So continue to really train, skill and reskill, upskill your teams that you currently have as you continue to hire more talent. So
yes, I think that's a great idea, Anita. And what we want to do is make sure that we continue that engagement, because once you bring people on board, you want to get people on get the right people on the bus, and then get them in the right seat. And in the right seat, people want to manage their own career path, their own growth. So they may change seats once they join your organization, different positions, but it has to be the right fit for the organization and the right fit for the employee.
So we can share that in some upcoming webinars soon.
Yes.
On career mobility and even virtual onboarding. So,
Great.
Laura?
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. No more questions. So I appreciate you joining us today, Anita and Billy, for sharing your expertise and your wisdom on this topic. Since we answered all the questions, we don't have questions to follow up with, but as we mentioned before, if members of your team registered for this webinar and they didn't get a chance to view this live, we're going to send the webinar link with the deck out to everyone who registered, so you can share this with your team members or other folks who would be interested in the topic. Thank you again so much for carving out time in your day to spend time with us, and we appreciate your attendance and your interest. And thank you so much for joining us as we deliver on our mission to empower healthcare organizations and professionals with the world's best technology solutions. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining our on-demand training today. Axxess is the only home healthcare technology company approved by the American Nurses Credentialing Center to offer continuing education credits and the most recommended home health software on Software Advice. You can watch more on-demand training videos through our industry-leading help center or at axxess.com, where you'll find tutorials, blogs, white papers, and answers to frequently asked questions. Axxess, empowering care anytime, anywhere.